welcome to FO Talks. With me is Stephen Huyler. He's a art historian and a cultural anthropologist. He's had a multi-decade-long love affair with India. He's been a keen observant of India. He likes to say that he has taken the pulse of India and tried to see it with unvarnished eyes. An interesting American takes the pulse of India. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, Atul. Yes, I have been very fortunate to spend most of my life in India, and very extensively. I went when I was 20. I arrived on my 20th birthday, and was introduced to India.
Did you fly in,
No,
or did you
I did not. I went
Amsterdam?
Yeah, I went by local transport by myself, from local bus and local train all the way.
No, but you landed in India, right? On a plane.
From Paris by local transport all the way across through about 9 or 11 countries. Came through Pakistan in 1971 in the autumn, arriving in India on my birthday, 20th birthday, which was October 27th. So right before the previous Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, and
that's the war in which my father served, actually.
Yeah, yeah, and I can remember coming through Pakistan and having everywhere troops and armament covered with camouflage and tanks and signs everywhere saying "Crush India." Then I crossed the border. Walked across the border. There was only one small border crossing open, and I bicycled a rickshaw into India myself because I felt sorry for the old man that would have been driving me, and I was so young and naive. It was my 20th birthday, and then on the Indian side, of course, there was the same thing, but in reverse, with anti-aircraft guns and everything camouflaged, and tanks and military troops parading and marching, and signs saying everywhere crush Pakistan. So it was quite an interesting time to come across.
And we are speaking in at the end of May 2025, when both countries have had a clash and may soon follow up with another clash. So
you never know. Yeah.
And the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, and I'm sure, like you, Atul, I've known countless people from both sides, and people who were born in what is now Pakistan, it came into India. People who were born in India that ended up in Pakistan, and yeah, it's a fascinating. But at any rate, my point was
you crossed into Punjab, riding a cycle rickshaw on your 20th birthday.
Right. Spent that night in the Golden Temple. I write about that in my new book. Spent that night in the Golden Temple and was totally dazzled by it.
What an entry. Much better entry into India than landing in a plane in Delhi or Bombay.
Oh, it was fabulous. And that first night, my 20th birthday, I spent until the Holy Granth was carried out and put to bed. About 2 a.m, I was up on the balcony overlooking the reading of the Granth and the Granth Sahib, and just witnessing that level of devotion and the level of community, which is so rare in my experience in the West. And so was deeply heartening. It was a marvelous introduction. And then I came down to Delhi a few days later, and immediately was invited to meet Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, who was Mahatma Gandhi's right hand, who was a freedom fighter who'd spent some years in prison, had for fighting the British, had set up the entire cottage industries program throughout India. I came.
How did you wrangle a meeting with her?
She kind of wrangled a meeting with me.
You were an attractive young lad.
Yeah, that was it entirely. No, I had an American artist friend who was one of the founders of the Dada movement, Beatrice Wood, and she was a close friend of Kamala Devi's, and she introduced me, and Kalmadevi opened doors for me right and left. And that is the reason that I say that I work to try to feel the pulse of the people of India, was her introduction was profound. And right then, when I was 20, just a few days after my 20th birthday, she wrote personal letters to about 60 people all over the country saying, take care of this boy. And I
Talk
was,
about having friends in high places.
oh, and these people, the people that I went and I stayed with, because wherever I went, they would invite me into their homes, and they would often invite me to stay. And they were the founders of the crafts cooperatives everywhere. They were usually the women who were these strong women who, many of them had been freedom fighters, had been jailed themselves, but they were these strong women. And so for me, my mentorship has always been women more than men. And I'm naturally a feminist. And I'm still a male. I'm still a white American male. You can't get more privileged than that. But with that, I try as much as possible to subsume that in order to be attentive to the needs and wishes and identities and stories of individuals in India. That's what I
So,
do.
so you go and meet these 60 people and you see the crafts cooperatives. And
Mm.
what is it that strikes you when you get there?
Honestly, Atul,
Hmm.
although I loved going to those crafts cooperatives, and I've always been fascinated by the making of things, the way that things are, the handmade things, the way that tools work, or the way that, say, a shuttle goes back and forth, or the weaving goes on, or a carving is happening, or a pot is thrown. That interests me, but that was secondary to being in the homes. It was being in the homes. It was being a guest in an Indian home and sleeping sometimes just on a charpai, sometimes quite simply, because not all of these people were wealthy. And just witnessing the ways in which the home functioned, the ways in which the family dynamics worked. I learned at an early age, at that year, to witness and respect the puja room, the way in which it was kind of the center of the focus for every family. And certainly as an outsider, I was sort of kept away initially, but over a period of time, I grew to respect and understand that, and then doors opened. And it was really that. It was the relationships between grandparents and grandchildren, between family members, that captivated me.
So, very quickly for our viewers and listeners who are not Indian, puja room literally means the worship room. That's where you
Yeah,
keep the deity or
yeah.
a number of deities, and you have your daily rituals, sometimes once a day, sometimes thrice a day, sometimes perhaps even more. And every family, in a way, depending on the region, the community, the caste, the class, has sort of a different set of rituals that have been
Right,
handed
and
down generations.
it might not be a room. It could be just
A corner in a room.
a corner or a shelf in the kitchen or something. And what's interesting is, even though the word puja is Sanskritic and means relates to Hindu, there are the same space in virtually the homes of all people in India, whether you're Christian or Jain or Buddhist or even in a sense Muslim. And it's a little bit different, but it's that area, the place that is kind of the cornerstone or the foundation of the family. And that deeply affected me and motivated much of what I do. I learned at an early age to just try to be quiet and allow the experience of the environment I was witnessing to speak for itself. And sometimes it was in voice. Sometimes, many times people would want to tell me what they were seeing, what they were doing, or what it was about. Many times it was just being quiet and watching, and not trying not to intrude with my large white American, tall, fair-haired presence. That's sometimes hard to do, but I learned how to do it. And I think for me, Atul, one of the greatest signs that I was there, that I was really there, was when I began to be so accepted in the families that I visited that they would drape themselves over me the way they might drape themselves over an uncle that was visiting, or a cousin that was at the house, or a family friend. Where in India, there's a different sense of personal intimacy between people. And I'm really speaking male to male, and it's non-sexual, but the idea of just men will hold hands or have arms around each other in the ways that the America that I was raised in didn't happen very often. And for me to be so accepted that I was just a member of the family was, it just warmed my heart. And it doesn't mean there weren't conflicts. Of course there were. There could be arguments. There could be. I'm not trying to make it out that I'm some sort of saint. I'm not. I'm still a human being, and there still are issues of being human. But
so your book, recent book, is titled "Transformed by India Life."
It is, yeah.
And from the sounds of it, the transformation begins right as you cross the border on a rickshaw, riding a rickshaw, cycling a rickshaw, pedaling hard, and spending the first night at the Golden Temple. So, walk us through the book. What made you write it?
Yeah, the book does begin there, and the first 3 chapters are the impressions from that first trip, which were seminal. They were the things that really began my transformation. But the book is chronological, and I love to write, Atul. I love the art of expressing myself. And my wife and I wrote a mystery a number of years ago and attended a lot of mystery writing workshops. And I realized about halfway through this book that I've employed some of that, because it's to try to keep the reader going. It's try to keep, what is it? How can you create a story so that it captures the interest but doesn't say too much? How can you simplify it? How can I simplify it? And how can I vary the emotions so that I try in the book through the stories, and they are chronological, to talk with humor about funny things that happened, or awful things that happened, shocking things that really shocked me to my core, or those that made me sort of bubble over with laughter, not necessarily from humor but from joy, or the beauty that I saw, and then the stark horrors that I saw. All of those are my experience of India. And it would be incorrect, it would be inappropriate for me to pretend that part of that didn't happen because, isn't India beautiful? Let's go sit in an ashram and chant Om. That's not what I am drawn to India about. I'm drawn to India to witness people, and what I become, Atul, is a bridge. I try to be a bridge of understanding between the West and India, between India and the West. I try to draw connections and try to convey what it is. So what I've done in my life, this is my 7th book, but I've written many other things that are published. And I have curated about 25 major museum exhibitions globally, in India as well as in Britain and all over the United States, and some in Europe. And all of those exhibitions are about the same thing. And then I've led tours of India. And so the book talks about those too. That talks about the tours, it talks about the exhibitions, it talks about but within it all of it is that rooted story, the story not only of me, but of those extraordinary people I've met. And when I say extraordinary, Atul, I don't mean that they are great. Yes, Kamala Devi was considered to be great, but I consider as extraordinary as Kamala Devi say, a widow that I became close friends with in Odisha, or the tribal people, Adivasis, whom I worked with also in Odisha, or uh, uh, people that I've known in Kerala and Tamil Nadu well, because I work all over the subcontinent, in Gujarat, in Madhya Pradesh, in Chhattisgarh, in Bengal, in Bihar, in Andhra, in Karnataka. I Almost all of my colleagues are people who work in one region, or if they've been lucky, they might compare two regions and the art or the culture of two regions. But from the very beginning, I've defined myself as a cross-cultural surveyor. As such, Atul, that has its tremendous drawbacks and it has its strengths. The strengths are that I have an overview of India that few others have. The drawbacks are that I don't know any culture as well as somebody who's spent years in one culture. I can't possibly. And I will always be an outsider. I can't pretend to be an Indian. I was not born there. I was not raised in those homes that I so enjoy staying in. I'm still always an outsider, however welcomed in I am. So those are just primary aspects.
So you've talked about being a bridge between the West and
Yeah.
India.
Yeah.
Why do you think both India and the West need that bridge? What is it about India that is often ignored or missed in translation or misinterpreted?
Well, I'll
I'd
give you.
love to hear.
I'm not sure the why of the why, but for example, in my first 30 plus years of work in India, I've been there 54 years. In my first 35 years, almost no book of world history talked about India. Almost no book of art history, world art history, talked about India. Or if it did, in either case, it would be a few pages. My experience, because I have degrees in Indian history and Indian art history and others, I have a doctorate, are to try to look at the relevance of Indian culture throughout history and try to understand how it's interwoven with our own cultures, the Western cultures. Most foreigners do not and have not accepted that, except there's a little bit coming in the last 10 or 15 years. And so I began 54 years ago aware of that and trying to make a difference. And that's what I mean by trying to build bridges of communication.
You're sitting in Connecticut. That's New England.
Oh, no, in Maine. In
Maine,
Maine.
sorry. My apologies. Yeah,
No,
you're
no.
sitting in Maine. And that is indeed Northeast US. And the
And white
reason,
bread.
exactly, and the reason why you are sitting there is because the Spaniards decided to get to India by sailing west and discovered a continent. So surely, given the fact that in the US you call Indians, cowboys and Indians, there's some idea vaguely in the subconscious, if nothing else, about the importance of India, especially to the
Well,
very discovery of America.
or the attitude that they might be savages who scalp people and live in teepees. There's such an ignorance, or the fact that most people associate India only with gurus and Hare Krishnites and Sanskritic Hinduism, as fine as it is, the Brahmanical or Brahminical, if you prefer the word, Hinduism is a valid part, but it's only a part of it. And the broader culture, which is what I work with, the pulse of the people, is not Brahminical. It's not Sanskritic. It's far different from that. And I'm trying to give that voice. I'm trying to show that it's really not about people sitting in temples or wherever else in an ashram and meditating at all. It's people who are hardworking. And what is it that they do? Is their work? What is their What are their lives about? After all, these are 1 in 5 human beings that lives in India. And if we don't know about them, if we skirt over them completely in our uh, uh, textbooks or our surveys of world history, and we don't acknowledge this 1/5 of humanity, and especially when we consider its historical precedence on what it's done for the development of Western civilization, then we're missing out. We're
So
just
two
we're doing
questions follow.
ourselves a disservice. I'm sorry.
Yeah, two questions follow.
Yeah.
What is this broader culture of India that you talk about? And what are the aspects of this culture that fascinate you?
Well, what the is it's a tremendously diverse group of people, as diverse as there is in any landmass in the world, and
You,
it's an
you could you
endless,
could argue India is like Europe, except more complicated because it
far
doesn't.
more
The different
far more
languages
complicated.
don't have the same scripts,
Yeah, far
and
more
and you have
complicated.
much more religions. You didn't have the unifying influence of either the Roman Empire or the Roman Catholic Church.
No, precisely. Yeah, that's a great argument, and I no, I think far more diverse than Europe, far more diverse, and so that is for me an endless source of fascination. I can't possibly know India. I can't possibly be an expert on anything because I'm always going to be an outsider, and I'm always um, trying to understand, trying to open my mind to what it is that I'm seeing and experiencing.
So
So
let me
that's
stop
part
you
of the
there.
draw.
So
That's part of the draw.
diversity, yeah, that's part of the draw. The diversity you talk about, and
Mm.
when it comes to diversity, let's talk a bit about this broader culture. What you've seen all the way from Tamil Nadu to Punjab, where you first entered, from Bengal to Gujarat.
Mm.
Uh, how are the cultures so different? Is it the weather? Is it the art? Is it the food? Is it the way
Yes,
people dress? Is it all of the
yes,
above?
all of the above. And you know, it's as diverse in skin color, in physical attributes,
Mhm.
in stature, in sense of music, in sense of sound, in sense of voice and articulation, in the sense of literature. The scope of Tamil literature is remarkable and completely different from North Indian literature, and no better, no less, just different. The same is true with music. There's almost no comparison between Carnatic music, which is South Indian music, and North Indian music. It's just a world of difference. But foods, most foreigners, whether that's American or British or Europeans, really only know Punjabi food as what they consider to be Indian food. And I mean, Punjabi food is good, but it's just one type. And it's like saying, how would I say that? That English cooking is the same as French or Swedish or Spanish or Italian. They're just not the same. And in
I mean,
Italy, you have
just
you have
just
North and South Italian or East and West Italian, and those are completely different. In India, it's the same thing, except
so
more so.
England and Poland are closer together,
Yeah,
and France and Poland are certainly closer together than Punjab and Tamil Nadu, not to mention
absolutely,
Kashmir. So,
absolutely,
so,
and not
so,
only by geographically, but culturally and
and
linguistically, and
exactly,
as you said, not only linguistically, but the whole uh, the whole
script.
script itself is
Yeah.
based on, it has a different base. It's not even that it's related. It's not related. And so that diversity is just, I mean, there are things that overlap. I'm not trying to say that the cultures are so isolated. They're not. There has always been an interrelationship of cultures. And that's what I study too, is how do they interweave? How do the cultures of India, what are the similarities between Tamil Nadu and Punjab? What are the differences between
So tell
Odisha?
us. So tell us what are the similarities between Punjab and Tamil Nadu, and what are the differences? Let's get granular.
Hmm. Yeah, I maybe buried myself with that one. Um, um, but the you know north and south, Tamil Nadu or Kerala, either one, and the far north, say Punjab or UP, Uttar Pradesh, uh, are the south is far more. It may not be matrilineal, all of it, some of it is, but there is far more awareness of it. It's far less patriarchal than it is in the far north,
Hmm.
and by that, um, there is far more focus on literacy in the south than there is in the north. Always
Hmm.
has been. So it's not something that's new. And with that, there are,
Especially female literacy,
I was
you
going to
mean?
say, there's education among women, and always has been, um, uh, uh, more so than there has been in the north. But there are attitudes that are similar. There's an attitudes of women who are protected, women who are cared for, who are the nucleus of the home, and the attitude of the patrilineal system in some ways is similar. There are aspects about it that are, and there are tremendous differences. The way in which poetry or epic, a legend, talks about the position of women within the society is not dissimilar in both. Um, but the expressions of that, the unfolding of that, the way in which one enters a community, and the interactions that one has as an outsider is completely different. Because women in the north, maybe not as much in Punjab, but are can be veiled, and can be more removed. Punjab, with Sikhism, there's more of it's a little bit hard to define that, because Sikhism prides itself in relative egalitarianism between the sexes. So then we get into contradictions. But
Although they do have very high selective abortion rates of women in Punjab.
yes, yes,
So
I
that is
know.
also true. So
Yeah,
yes, women
yeah.
do go to
There are
gurudwaras, and you
all
see
these
women
dichotomies. Yeah,
can be
yeah,
very strong, but that is
yeah,
also true that they do, highly selective abortions of female fetuses.
yes. I'm fascinated too by the creative expression of humanity wherever it might be, and that is in many facets. I tend to write
Such
books
as, such as,
I tend to write books that focus on the arts of the people,
Mhm.
and largely the arts of women. So it's what women do creatively to bring beauty to their homes,
Mhm.
and sometimes to their community. Um, but and that is it's vital in North India, and it's vital in South India. Its expression is different, but it's not. There is that quality of expressiveness that is treasured in all parts of India by women. And maybe the trends in the recent years being the last 25 or 30, are more uh, disbanding of that, letting that go in the North than it is in the South. The South is still treasuring women's art in ways that are less treasured in North India. But
Yeah. But
but
North
yeah,
is suffering from this explosive urbanization,
yeah,
and North is also suffering from economic uh, despair in some ways. North Indians are fleeing all over to work.
despair and
They're working in
disparity.
Gujarat, they're working in Tamil Nadu. So you're seeing this massive exodus. So there's
Yeah,
more dislocation. And of course, North has a more brutal history of violence,
much
lest we
more.
forget.
Yeah,
Invasion after invasion, partition, and so on and so forth. So the
absolutely.
North is much more traumatized and divided.
And then with that, what you're just referring to, Atul, is with all that migration down to take jobs in Tamil Nadu or Chennai or
Or Gujarat
Kochi
or
or whatever
wherever,
it
or
might be.
Mumbai.
Yeah, Mumbai. Um, there is with it then the movement of awareness. The, for example, when my first decades in India, you couldn't get South Indian food in the north at all. And now it seems like everybody's eating dosas, which for those of you that don't know is a common South Indian pancake that's delicious, fabulous. But
I
I
mean,
can't get.
there are two foods that have taken off in the north.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, and you travel perhaps even more than me. I travel a fair bit. I've just got back from India. So one is, of course, dosa, which is South Indian, which you didn't see even when I was younger. Leave aside your days. And two is Chinese food, chow
No, it's
mein.
so true. Yeah.
Everywhere you see Chinese food and
Yeah, that's true.
momos and Tibetan momos everywhere. So
I know. So yeah,
people,
so the Tibetan momos are coming in all over the place. It's so interesting to witness. And
you go to Bangalore. When I first went to Bangalore, you had Mawali Tiffin Room and all these great dosa establishments and traditional South Indian eateries. And now you look around and it's momos and whatnot
but
everywhere.
also, when you get a South Indian thali, for those of you that don't know, a thali is a plate with many different dishes on it.
With a
You
raised
get
rim. A thali is a plate with a raised rim and
with the
lots
raised
of
rim
small
and small dishes, or
vessels.
sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes there's no dishes, but depending upon where you're eating. But but the point being that now they all not always, but often will have roti. Roti being a North Indian wheat-based flatbread, like a chapati. The chapati is a roti, or like a tortilla. Um,
Yeah. That's
and
a good example.
but they're in the South. They were never there, and so and not to overstress this. It's simply that it's an example of the cross fertilization of culture that's happening in India today. So things are changing rapidly, very rapidly, and yet, Atul, what I have found from the very beginning, my first days in India, is people decrying the loss of tradition and the loss of Indians decrying what they see as the loss of their identity. And I find the Indian identity, I was just in India too, I find it so strong. I do not think that that's lost. I think it's just changing. It's just
Let me ask you.
moving. It's
Let me
just
ask you.
redefining itself. Yeah.
So let me ask you, that may be true in the smaller towns, but in places like Mumbai and Delhi, the children of the elites do not speak any native languages.
Mm,
They come and do undergraduate degrees in
mm,
America. They
mhm,
study with professors like you to discover Indian history and Indian culture and Indian art. Do you not think that what we are seeing in India today is a massive deterioration in native languages, particularly the northern ones?
mhm.
Hindi publishers complain that the only market left for Hindi literature is either astrology, which is not astronomy, for those of you who might get confuse it with astronomy, and pornography.
Mm. Oh,
And
wow. Wow.
and and you rarely get young kids from privileged families or even upper middle class families and even middle class families who can speak half decent Hindi.
No, I think
May
that's
be
true.
different. It
I
may be
think that's
different in Tamil Nadu. It may be different in West Bengal. It may be different in Maharashtra, which have stronger regional pride. But we are certainly seeing some loss of culture, Stephen. We can't say that it's just
no.
more.
I'm not. I wasn't saying that there's not a lack of culture. What I'm saying is that there still is a strong individual identity. That's not exactly the same
Yeah,
thing. Traditions are changing, are rapidly adapting. India, one of the aspects of studying, being a cultural anthropologist and
yeah,
studying cultures, is that India has always been a culture of adaptation. There's never been a stagnant culture in India,
sure.
never, anywhere. And so it's always been a cross fertilization. And I'm finding that, yes, it's accelerated now, but
Yeah,
there is, what you spoke about the people who study outside of India are still the minority. They're still not the majority. They're
they're not,
still
but they have
they're still the
disproportionate
privilege.
influence.
There's still the
And in
privilege, and the
India, you
masses don't have that. The
no.
masses don't have that. And
So
I work with the masses, regardless
okay,
of whether it's in the urban areas or the rural areas or the small cities or the big cities. It's
yeah,
still the masses that so I'll work with the slums in Mumbai or whatever, or in Delhi. And so
right.
those people don't have access to that. Those people keep their traditional cultures. And one of the things that's been so astounding to me, Atul, because there's a real, to me, because I study history too, is I understand why there's an antipathy in India today towards Western attitudes towards India, very strong. But what I've been overwhelmed with is how positively this book that I've written has been accepted in India. The reviews I've been getting in India are, there's not even one that is slightly negatively critical. All of them are written by young Indians in their 20s and 30s. That's what's exciting to me. When I was doing my book tour in January, February, everywhere I went, there were young Indians in each city, not just in the South, who were coming up to me and engaging because they want to try to do something to help India going forward. And I found that again and again and again, and I did not expect it, Atul, when I went there. And it was just thrilling. You know, it's not about me at all. It's about these young
Let
people.
me stop you. Let me stop you there and ask you a question pertaining to that. You've been all around Indian cities. I have a question. India is seeing, as many other countries have seen in the recent past, China saw this before India, and Africa is now experiencing, many African countries are now experiencing this urbanization at breakneck pace.
Mm-hmm.
And it's chaotic. You talked about the slums. How does India retain its crafts, its cuisines, and many of its cultural traditions when people are living in the belly of the beast and life is very tough, very pressured, and very stressful? I mean, if you've been to a slum in Mumbai, you travel a long way to get to work, you struggle to make ends meet. If you have an accident, you could be dead, or certainly you could face financial ruin. The state of India is a flailing state. It has not been able to provide decent schools or healthcare or parks or the basics, the very basics. So, how does a country which for years has been agricultural, where you've had genteel small towns, adapt to this explosion of urbanization?
I'm not sure that I don't have an easy answer to that. No, you know, it's not just a fix all. But what I
There
can
are no
say,
fixes, but I want your observations. Yeah.
no, yeah. But what I can say is that when I spend the time, the weeks and months that I've been in slums, for example, and worked with the people, I sense a tremendous. I do not experience victimhood. Very rarely. People are exhausted, yes, because of the commuting they have to do. They're worn out because they don't get enough nutrition. They're worried because because of whatever it is with the housing issues that they have and the urban issues of lack of water or lack of sewage or whatever it might be. The issues that they have, they still don't identify themselves as victims. My experience in the West, in similar communities, in communities where in South America or in parts of the United States or in parts of Europe, where there's a tremendous stress on the people. I have not been in Africa. Where there's this tremendous stress on the people view themselves as victims first and foremost. There's this attitude of desperate I am being wronged. In India, it's not that people recognize that they have rights and they strive to eradicate the issues that are beleaguering them. So it's not like they're apathetic, not in the slightest. But I don't find apathy at all. But what I do find is people who know who they are more. They know who they are. And that sense of identity is, you asked me half an hour ago, what is it that I see most about India? What is it that I most respond to? And one of those things is identity. Indians, for most people in India, know who they are and what their relationships are to their families. People that I know in the West don't have that same grounding. We just don't. I come from a family where I know 150 or 60 of my relatives. That's very rare. And we are friends. But that's very rare. I think that's one of the reasons that I get along so well in India is that I understand extended family. But most of my friends don't. They know a few of their relatives and they may not get along with them. And in India, it's not that you get along with everybody, but you have an effort towards the sense of community belonging with, at least within your family, if it's not within your geographic community. And that is even true when you are in a satellite of being down now working in Bengaluru or in Chennai when you grew up in wherever, in Kanpur. You're still are going to keep your identity more so than I'm finding in the West. And that is a part of jati. That is a part of caste. And now I could be opening a huge can of worms by talking about that. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. When you look at the horrific aspects of caste, don't think that everything about caste is wrong, because it's not. It gives identity. It gives people this sense of who they are. And so,
And so it gives them cultural continuity. What you're saying is that if let's take someone says he's a Sayyid, all right, a direct descendant of the Prophet, because caste exists in all Indian religions. Or someone is Syrian Christian, which means they are direct descendants of the first 100 Brahmins who converted to Christianity.
Yeah.
In a way, that is a foundational myth connecting people of that community.
Yeah. And that has not dissolved in India. It has not dissolved.
Is urbanization making a dent both on extended families and this caste identity?
Well, no question it's making a dent, but has it eradicated it? No. Has it destroyed it to the point of course it's making a dent, of course. And what you said about those, I say, wealthy people who send their children to schools who speak only English in the family and send their kids to privileged schools overseas, even those people have a sense of identity, but that's still not the primary pulse of the Indian people. The pulse of the Indian people are the rest of them, the people of India, not the elite. The elite anywhere are the elite. They're the small percentage. And
Yes. But the point is that this is not just the elite. This culture is spreading in the North a lot. And English is a marker of status and success.
Yes,
and therefore, the valuing of literature in particular in the vernacular is going down. So yes, people do use Hindi, but even in the slum, when people make some money, they want to send their kid to an English medium school.
Yeah.
So let's not get away. But
no. I agree.
But you've touched upon some very interesting things. Let's go back to caste. Part of the Brahminical tradition is rightly criticized by a lot of people as being extremely unjust. Let's go to Varanasi, my ancestral city. The Mahant of Sankat Mochan is a Brahmin, comes from a priestly family. And his father was the priest. His father's father was the priest. This current Mahant is fat, lazy, and, dare I say, not terribly clever. I won't call him stupid. That would be rude. But
don't be rude. Yeah, don't be rude.
But shall we say he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer? Why is it that he should be the priest of this temple? Shouldn't it be open to the best Sanskrit scholar, regardless of caste? Now, yes, it may be so that people who come from families with Sanskrit learning will have an advantage, but this aspect of caste rightly irks people. At the same time, a lot of the more nuanced observers of India, including you, observe that caste does shape culture and gives people identity, and perpetuates not necessarily stratified, unjust outcomes. For instance, if we look at the Marwaris and many extremely talented people are Marwaris in business, they have benefited from that culture of business exposure. And similarly, Tamil Brahmins, infamous, of course, you've spent time in Tamil Nadu for being a bit haughty, but they have a great intellectual culture. And I believe at least two of India's Nobel Prize winners, two physicists at least Chandrasekhar and C.V. Raman, were both Tam Brahms. They have an extraordinary intellectual culture. And my point is, how do you navigate these two ends of caste? One, preserving something, whether it's Marwari culture or Tamil Brahmin culture, and the other, or the Sayyid culture or the Syrian Christian culture, and of course, I've talked of the more privileged caste, and the injustice inherent in the Sankat Mochan example, that you can be corrupt, you can be thick-headed, you can steal from the temple itself, and you can still be the priest.
So, Atul Bhai, don't you think that it's true in every part of the world? Not that, but for example, look at Manifest Destiny in the West. Look at the idea of the right of every Westerner to own their own land, their own property, their own whatever. I own my own house. I have my own garden. I'm looking at it out the window right there, right beyond me. This is mine.
And it has been built on the genocide of Native Americans.
My point exactly. My point exactly. So it's not that it's so simple. It's built on the genocide of Native Americans. And so where is the right and the wrong? When is something that is my perceived right for ownership, or perceived right for the ability, the things that have made America what it is today, are those aspects of individualism, which create the isolated cultures that make you not have the extended community. It's those very same things. It doesn't mean that it's better or worse. It has terrible aspects to it. Awful, like farming out your elderly, not having, you get to 70 something and you're no longer of value, or whatever it might be. There's just so much.
At least they don't put you on at least they don't put you out on an ice float into the ocean to die. That was what some Inuits used to do, right?
That's true. I mean, that's the point. We all have good and bad sides. It's not that
my question was, how does India, you talked about caste, how do we manage to balance that? Because there are demands for justice.
I do not know. I don't pretend to have an answer for that.
I don't.
And I understand what you're saying about the Mahant and the what right does he really have to have that position when somebody else who was far more qualified for that qualified from the standpoint of intelligence and capacity, could better...
And devotion as well, not just intelligence and capacity. Devotion to the cause, devotion to scripture, devotion to the temple, all of that. I mean, he's just a member of the Lucky Sperm Club, which at its worst, caste perpetuates.
I haven't heard that reference before, but I do like it. Oh, dear. So I don't really have an answer, and really basically what we're talking about here is I've had the good fortune of spending more than half a century in India, listening to and being with the people, and with that I've learned many things, and part of what I've learned is to get off of my high horse as an American and try to just be present for whatever it is that the reality of those people wants to say, and to try to, as much as possible, and my last chapter in the book is really about trying to decode my own Western privilege, my own male male hubris and my own Western white Americanism. How can I possibly? I can't. I am that. I am that. But what can I do to lessen my interpretation of everything through that lens? How can I, and including the earlier chapters of the book, how, and when I wrote that chapter, the one on entitlement, then I went back and looked at all those chapters and thought, really, I'm not going to rewrite the whole book, because those were my realities in those years that I was experiencing them. That's who I was. But, look at these mistakes I've made. And I try to own that, if I can.
So you're trying to diffract as little light through your lens when you look at India.
Well, yeah, possibly. Those rose-colored glasses. I certainly started with them, Atul. And my wife I've been married for the same period of time I've been in India. My wife,
is she Indian?
No, but she rightfully used to say that I looked at India through rose-colored glasses, and I did. I wasn't really seeing a lot of what was there, but I've tried to pull that away. Undo that as much as possible.
Brilliant. We've been speaking for a while. You've been very generous with your time. Those of you who haven't read the book, do read his book. Where is it available? Can they buy it off Amazon? Transformed by India Life?
It's available. Transformed by India is available to pre-order on Amazon in North America. It is available in India already, and it will be available in Britain starting the 2nd of June, and in Europe. Okay.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time, Stephen. We'll have you back. We look forward to op-eds on Indian culture and observations on all sorts of things. And good luck with your book, and good luck with your next one.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good. All right. Bye.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.